Right. To call the meeting to order. So the town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize its traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, we'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for May 14th, 2024. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Administration, is there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
No additions. No additions from the administration.
Council, is there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? Hearing none.
I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for Committee of the Whole May 14th, 2024. Please.
Let's vote now.
You know, the two from not getting a thing.
Okay, so Mary Newson and Councilor Stash.
There it is.
Hey, that is carried. The next item on the agenda is citizens minute with council. So minute with council provides an opportunity where residents can address council regarding issues, events, celebrations, or concerns. To ensure a constructive and welcoming environment, please adhere to the following guidelines. Keep your remarks concise and limited to 1 minute. Address the chair of the meeting when speaking to council. Avoid asking questions as this is not a Q&A session, and maintain a respectful tone and language. Administration, is there anyone online that wishes to speak today?
No.
And is there anyone in the room that would like to speak today?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Okay, your name, please.
Terry Arsenal, and I'd like to know why my taxes went up 4.3%.
We don't have, this is not a question and answer period at this point, but administration can get back. If they have your contact information, they can get back to you with an exclamation on any of the tax information.
Right. And my other question would be, where's that, all that money going, that 24 mil that they
Sorry,
got?
point of order. It's not a question and answer period. It's been communicated several times. There's other avenues if citizens have questions that they can submit questions. I don't think this is the appropriate venue and it's not the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any statements you'd like to make?
Pardon me?
I said, do you have any non-questions, just a statement you'd like to make to council on that matter, and you can direct your questions to administration?
Well, I was just wondering what that 24 million they got in reserve, what they're gonna do with that.
Point of order, this has already been discussed. It's a question, not a statement.
So we can have administration reach out to you to follow up on those items. Is there any other statements or things you'd like to share that are not questions?
Yeah, what's happening with that par 999? Are they
Point of order, that's a question, not a statement.
Lordy?
Well, if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
it is very clear. It is not a question and answer. We can't answer your questions here. So if you have questions, administration is available. You can send emails, you can in that fashion, but it's not going to get answered at this tape. So it's for statements, it's for anything that you'd like
Well,
to
they
share.
can get back to me on that. They can for sure do that. You know, I would like answers. I'm a taxpayer and I would sure like answers. And obviously I'm not getting any answers, just a bunch of lies. So let's just go from there.
All right. Well, thank you, and we will have administration get back to you on the
Thank
issues
you.
that you brought up. Is there anyone else that would like to bring anything up for a minute, council?
I would peace.
Mr. McDonald?
It's okay if I sit down, you guys know I got a loud voice anyway.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, hello, council. In front of you today is an administration report regarding the Valley District Shopping Center safety issues. Why it has taken this long and now to the point of spending more taxpayers' money on yet another report, or if I may say a study or a survey, is mind-boggling. One just needs to use common sense by coming down and seeing it in person. The issue is folks driving the wrong way and speeding. A few months back, 2 signs were placed outside King Drug Okay, these signs are doing fantastic things down there right now. Okay, the two signs have got written on them wrong way, okay, and it's working. Okay, so maybe instead of confusing people with going back to diagonal parking, losing parking spaces, attempting to make another one-way street, use some common sense, save some taxpayers' money. I would like to thank council members Magoon, Chambers, and Taylor for coming down in person and walking the district with me. Okay, all we need is more signage, bigger signage, lower speed limits posted at 30 kilometers, and possibly arrows on the road. That's all I gotta say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald, and stay tuned as that will be one of our items tonight, as you know, where we will discuss some of those things. So appreciate that feedback. Is there anyone else who would like to have a minute with council today?
Yeah. Pam Zawadiak.
Okay, Pat?
I've been here to quite a few meetings already regarding the water drainage behind my property. And the nuisance poplar trees behind my property, and this is already 8 months. And nobody's gotten back to me. I got one phone call and that's it. So, I mean, I pay taxes. I've been paying taxes for 40 years here. And I'm starting to get really disgruntled about it.
Okay, well, we can have administration look into follow up, and they have your contact information and address. Et cetera.
Yeah, they do.
But we can have,
Thing is, I'm disabled and there's trees popping up behind my property and I'm getting ready to get rid of them. Because the suckers come in my yard and they're ruining my grass.
we'll have administration look into that and get back to it.
Well, I'm gonna start filming things pretty soon, as soon as we get a good downpour. I'll have a good video for you guys.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else this evening? You have anything? No. All right. Thank you everyone for that. So now we move on to our delegations and presentations, agenda item 4.1. We have our RCMP quarterly report. We could turn it over to Shiloh Jagmani, please.
Thank you. On April 26th, I forwarded a quarterly report from the Hinton RCMP. It's the Q4, our year goes from April to April, so it's the final report of the year. On the second page, you'll notice that we did have an increase in criminal harassment, as well as theft of motor vehicle, possession of stolen goods, and quite a spike in arsons. I looked into a few of these files. It looks like a lot of running vehicles during the winter were stolen with keys in it, copper wire, as well as outbuildings and sheds that have been caught on fire by people staying or living in the sheds. As we move on through the report, there is on page, I think I'm on 4 here, the municipal policing report shows the number of engagements that were written down as the different stakeholder meetings that were attended to by myself and other members.
If I may, Ms. Ferguson, can we just have a question from there, Lisa?
Staff Sergeant, or through the chair to Staff Sergeant Fragmenti. Are arsons or are the shed fires where people are living in the sheds, are those classified as arsons in these stats?
They came in as arson to the shed, so not necessarily were they lit on fire as a criminal mode, but it was as a result of space heaters. They came in to calls as people lighting them on fire. So
Okay,
not malicious, but they're staying in the tents and they're using space heaters in the shed.
okay, excellent. So this isn't a situation like what happened in Edson a couple of years ago, the car dealerships.
No.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
On community priorities, this was the final report from our APP, which is our annual performance report. There was a decrease, 73 files in the past 3 months with theft, for a total of 112 files for theft in that quarter, which means our theft rate did go up. But we did a number of search warrants as well as conditional checks, which then increased our calls for theft as well as possession of stolen property. In our priority for community relations, we did a number of coffee with a cop as well as yellowhead patrols and increase patrols other than in police cars. And we exceeded the goal there that was set at 80, and we counted 118 patrols. We looked at decreasing injury collisions, and we ended up having more injury collisions for that quarter due to seasonal driving. We had a number of sheriffs as well as Edson Traffic, and we started an enforcement program in town called Safe Roads, where members who are off duty would be attending to do traffic shifts. And we ended up short on our goal for violation tickets, but it comes down to manpower throughout the year. And we wrote 517 out of 1,000 tickets last year. For crime stats, we did have an increase, as I said, 42% with property crime as well as drug offenses. And in regards to the stats, it's a different way to kind of look at that. We have been really hitting the pavement with our crime reduction unit. And a lot of times if they're writing search warrants, they're also finding a large amount of stolen property within. And that's also increasing our stats as well as our drug offenses, because many drug offenses are not called in as drug offenses, called in as suspicious persons, and then we find drugs on people. So that's why the increase is seen on those, as well as we did, like I said, a number of search warrants, and we found lots of stolen property. Our full-time, so we call it our FTE at the detachment. Our goal is to have 17 established positions at the detachment. We currently we're working at an FTE of 15.3, and that does not include, we have 3 on medical leave, 1 on GRW, which is graduated back to work, and we're working to fill 1 vacancy. So we are down from that number by 4 positions. The next one would be our financial report for the year there, the 2023-2024 financial report. We are low on our finances, but it's because we don't have the members in those positions. Subject to any questions that you may have.
To council, is there any questions that staff sergeant for committee this evening? Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a quick question, and it's not related to the report. I think it's more just for the public, and it was somebody that I was just talking to today. With the threat of fires and wildfires and things of that in our community, is it reasonable that if a citizen witnesses a fire that's not meeting the fire ban requirements, is that the responsibility to call the RCMP on that, or what is the avenue? Because I know, I mean, there's a fire department, but there's no actual fire, like who's responsible after hours, or who do they call if that's the case?
It would be to call the RCMP.
Okay,
And we would attend, and if the fire deemed to be improper fire pit, we would either deal with it or we would call the fire department out.
and if I may, to clarify, in a proper fire pit, but we also require a mesh over top of that fire currently. Is that the what is needed to have a backyard fire?
Through the chair to all of the council, that is correct. We call it a fire or spark arrestor. It's a screen. It goes over the fire. It doesn't allow the sparks to fly and keeps the height of the fire down low. That is a requirement under the bylaw to have that in place. It's a very small fine for that. As I go forward, and I will be proposing some changes to the fire bylaw, that will be beefed up. That charge will be beefed up. Also, fire pits must be on private property. They can't be off their property. So that's something that we'll be addressing in the near future.
Okay. If I may just, yeah, I think it's important that our citizens know who to call and contact if they have a concern that way. So thank you for that.
If I may, Madam Chair. So our dispatch center has also contacted it because that is a frequent question in every community that they dispatch for. So if it's a non-emergent issue, the way that dispatch is handling it is they will hang on to it to the next day and make bylaw or a fire department take care of that issue. If there's a fire exists, the RCMP are to be called and they will get the fire department out to extinguish it and lay charges.
Councillor Taylor, you have a question?
Administration gave us a report that said there was 19 squatter camps. From a policing point of view, can you comment on those camps?
We've attended a number of camps throughout the town. Many of them are the same people that they move around. So as we find a squatter camp, we engage bylaw or the conservation officers if it's on crown land. And in many times they will move, but they'll move to another location and then we have to engage them again. So I'm not sure if 19 squatter camps is actually 3 people moving around or if it's actually 19 separate people. But we are, as soon as we receive calls in regards to squatter camps, we engage with bylaw in partnership with the conservation officers. And we deal with them as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other questions from council for Staff Sergeant? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you about the good work. Right. So we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is reports from administration. Agenda item 5.1 is the Athabasca Avenue Business District Safety Improvements. And I will hand this over to the administration, please.
Great. Thank you. Through the chair to all of council, I'll be speaking on this item tonight. So yes, we did engage WSP, who did some work and came up with some draft designs. We brought those to council. Then we went out and we sought public input on those. The public input is summarized attached. The takeaway is that the administration is pretty much recommending what Mr. McDonald put forward at the meeting with council. What we're recommending is that we install 30-kilometer-an-hour signs and directional arrow painting as the only additional safety improvements beyond what we've already done. The support was not very strong for switching back to a diagonal parking or the other improvements that were suggested. So we believe the right thing to do is to follow the public's opinion on that. And
Very much, council. Councillor McGlynn, thank you first, please.
I certainly would agree. I guess the only question I had that I don't see it specifically cited in here, so I want to make sure it's captured. Is the concept around some of the clarifying signage. I mean, the arrows are one thing, but that's only good for part of the year. What is the current state of the signage? Is it what's there? Is it large enough? Is it clear enough? And is that captured in the recommended action?
through the chair to all of council, we did install a number of wrong way signs. And so at this moment, I don't think we needed any additional signage in that regard. I think speed limit and directional signage should get us where we need to. But an additional sign or two marking an additional wrong way if we get a further complaint isn't a large cost, and I don't know that council needs to be involved with if someone's just looking for something, a small tweak like that.
This doesn't prevent anyone from seeking further information, but I'm pretty happy with the recommended action and with that clarification. That committee seek consensus to accept the public consultation of the Athabasca Avenue Business District safety improvements for information and accept administration's plan to complete 30-kilometer-an-hour speed signs and directional arrow painting as the completion of the safety improvements. And then just speaking to that, yeah, with the assumption that that clear signage indicating wrong way is preventing or hopefully trying to prevent people from going in directions they shouldn't be, just to ensure that their safety. And I do just want to express my appreciation to Mr. McDonald, the business owners in the Valley, for really advocating for ensuring that that safety element is present, especially given the fact that we do have TLC that's located in that area where we have students coming and going. So just making sure that the flow of traffic is safe for them. Thank you.
Okay, so. Councilor Watts?
Yeah, and I'll be speaking in favor of this. Granted, I just want to comment on, I think as a council and as administration, you know, common sense is in the eye of the beholder, and it's important that these are the types of public consultations that we need to do in order to find out is what common sense, is it that, and is there other ideas? And we heard from the citizens, and we now are taking the steps and actions that make that area safer. But I think it's our due diligence to look at all the avenues and you know, changing the parking, you know, it makes it more visible that it is a one-way when it's angled, but we've heard from the citizens. So I'm in favor of this. You know, I think that more signage and 30 kilometers, I don't think it's going to solve all the problems, but it's going to have an impact if we've already seen it already. So I'll be speaking in favor. Thank you.
Anything else from council on the matter? Oh, Councilor Race?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll speak in favor of this motion. I spent, spent several days down in the valley talking to people. I didn't come up with one person who wanted the change, so I will be speaking in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Seeing no other hands at this moment, we have a consensus that's on the table, so that committee seek consensus to accept the public consultation of Athabasca Avenue Business District safety improvements for information and accept administration's plan to complete 30-kilometer-an-hour speed signs and directional arrow painting as the completion of the safety improvements. So councilors, please vote now. Councilor Race, oh, she's on there as well. So that consensus is carried. Oh. Councilor Taylor? Oh, you're just voting by.
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
How much this 95,000 is left over now?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the chair. Through the chair to Councilor Taylor, it was on page 2 of the report. There are approximately 75,000 unspent of the $95,000 capital project.
Oh, I missed that, sorry.
No problem.
Councilor Haas.
Yeah, and just a clarifying question, and it's just more for understanding, because this is already a capital project. That's why this won't be coming to regular. We've already decided to do that. It's just now consensus of how that's going to look. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councilor Hawes, I was planning to bring it back to council just to get the same motion. So if you seek consensus on this tonight, we will bring it just so that it's on a formal motion as opposed to just a committee that, you know, that we're completing the project and not moving forward. We'll take it to council for the same motion.
Okay, so if I may follow, the reason I asked that is because typically we would then say to bring to the next regular or whatever, so I didn't see that on here, and I just assumed that because it is already a capital project that we've budgeted for, but that's fine, as long as then you know it's coming back there too, so thank you.
If there's a significant amount of money left over in a capital project, where does that go?
Through the chair to Councilor Taylor, unless you say otherwise, it would just be left as unspent and show up as a surplus at the end of the year. But you're also free to redesignate that someplace else should something come up through the.
Okay, thank you.
No other comments from anyone? We'll move to agenda item 5.2, which is the pool slide capital project update. And I'll hand this over to administration. Let's start that off.
Thank you, and I'll ask if Jude did speak.
Thank you, CEO McLaughlin, and through the chair to the rest of the committee. The pool slide report is an update to committee on the capital project originally approved in 2023 and carried forward into this year. Council on approving the project requested administration required rather than administration return an RFD before final execution of the project, especially as the hope was that HIAC could put in some preferences of their own on the slide model that was chosen. But also once investigations were completed to determine what the pool deck could support, because that was a risk point in the project approval, was an unknown feature of the project. So by way of an update, the deck survey was inconclusive in the end. It's been completed. But we do have a go forward plan, which is to open the deck and pour the pad required to support the slide. And apologies, the report does talk about mud jacking. Mud jacking was initially considered and then it was just bypassed to just open the deck up, pour the pad and go forward with that. Administration does have a target slide in mind, and there aren't a lot of distinct options for HIAC to consider, although color is still a choice they can weigh in on. And this is primarily because the location has to be where the slide was before. There's only so much space. The slide has to drop swimmers into the pool in a specific location. So there just isn't a lot of options out there. Although we had looked at a particular slide at a price in 2023, so I'll just get to that in a second. So there is a summary in this report on the updated costs of the project. Essentially, these are increased by $10,000 for the slide itself, which has gone up in price since it was initially priced out. About $8,000 for the pad, depending on what is found when the deck is opened. And furthermore, administration is urging that a budget contingency be added as well, because once the deck is open, we've got to deal with whatever it is we find there. Because we'll be on shutdown and we don't want to extend shutdown indefinitely or for great length of time. So the contingency is kind of recommended at about 10% or about $9,000, give or take. The original budget was 67 and the updated budget is now $107,000 given these additional costs. So administration is, sorry, I should also mention on the plus side, there's $10,000 pledged from the Kin Club. But it will be some time before that can be realized, just because they have a trust fund that they're dealing with. So at this point, we're recommending that the pool slide capital project be referred to a future meeting of council for either additional budget or suspension of the project, which is another idea that administration is strongly urging, until 2025, at which time we will have additional information from the viability study that's now being undertaken. So with that, I'll just take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duke. First, we have Councillor Haas in that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is around that particular suspension. With the examination of the facility and giving us an assessment of whether or not this is a reasonable cost to add to that building. When is the, I guess the looking outward, when that report might be coming to us?
So I can defer this question to our strategic projects director.
Thank you to the chair, Councillor Haas. I think we mentioned that the RFD will be going out in the next 14 days. We kind of have the draft about 25% complete as we speak. And then to your specific question, we believe that by late 2024, we were hoping, but we still are mindful of that it can inform the 2025 budget, at least have a draft. But it depends on the selection of consultants and of course the timing for them to turn things around. But that is still our aim in terms of the timeline.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, just a comment or statement to then is with this substantial over budget that we already have budgeted for, and with the unknown factor of that building assessment, you know, I'm wondering if we should consider suspending it, but I'd like to hear from other councillors on this one before moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Councillor Leguin.
I'm just looking for a reminder, because I think we've talked about this particular project several times. Understanding that the location is limited in where it can be positioned. Was there a particular style that had already been predetermined due to those limiting factors? Like essentially, and I forgive the question, at a high level, what's it going to look like for the community if it is installed, is my question.
Well, thank you. Through the chair to the rest of committee. My understanding is that the slide is going to be the maximum length of slide that you can get. Slides these days for this location, given the parameters of where we have to actually put it and the space on the deck that it's got to turn. Current materials are not what they used to be. So it used to be that you had this sort of polished fiberglass or acrylic slippery surface. This one is not that. It's more like an extruded plastic. They're not as slippery as they used to be, but this one does have some water that will be channeled down it, like there's a hose attachment. So that'll be part of it. I don't think it'll be good for kids, but not particularly great for adults. I don't suppose a lot of adults will be using it, but kids will. And I guess one other consideration that administration is having is that our potential for the recreation center is currently quite at a distance, and for a revamp or a change in that. And so it's difficult to give up on a sort of a refreshment of the service level without, entirely. So I'll leave it there.
May I follow up, Madam Chair? If it's the will of council to refer the matter to a regular meeting of council, is administration able to provide us with some imagery to bring to the public? That gives us an idea, even if it's not exactly what it looks like, but just to give the flavor of what the project might look like?
To the chair of the rest of the committee, yes, and my apologies that we could have included that tonight, and we just neglected to do so. So we'll for sure get that to you.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
I was just gonna recommend that when we bring it back to council, we'll include a picture.
We have Councillor Lawson and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just one quick question about, because if I recall in the original discussion on this matter, a couple of things, there was one where there was like a one slide and then there was one that had a dual slide. Are we looking at one or are we looking at a dual setup with the configuration of the deck and all that?
Thank you through the chair to the rest of the committee. It is one single slide. I believe it has a turn at the bottom. The capital project profile that you saw was very, very early days. It was really, we hadn't even looked. Current staff had not looked at the deck to determine if there was alternate locations which we could use for some different configurations. And since then, of course, we've got, quite a bit of understanding on the project now.
All right, Councillor Taylor.
The contingency you're suggesting, that's for any anticipated problems that we could run into, unanticipated problems that we could run into. That's what you said, correct?
Through the chair of the rest of the committee, that's exactly correct, and it is not as a way to plump the budget in any way. It's really just for those unexpected.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm in favor of proceeding with this because practically speaking, us going ahead on a rec center with a water treatment plant coming down the pipe and whatnot, it's going to be quite a ways into the future. So trying to make the rec center as I don't know, fun a place as you can possibly make it with things like this is it's going to enhance it for that period of time that we have to make do. Thank you.
Councillor Vernison.
Thank you. And through the chair to administration, is there a convenient time within the regular operating cycle of the facility for this work to be done?
Thank you, and through the chair to the rest of the committee. Exactly, there is, so it would be shut down in September. And so we have small windows and they're distant from each other. So every September, the pool is closed down. Without the viability report in hand, we could still proceed its shutdown with additional budget. Certainly in 2024. Could also potentially look at an unplanned shutdown for 2 weeks, let's say in January, February, if that was a better time. But that we just have no certainty on the feasibility of that.
In order to make the September shutdown timeframe, what would the deadlines for this decision in council be?
I thank you through the chair to the rest of the committee, as soon as possible. And it would be obviously prior to the viability. Next council meeting.
We have Councillor Magoon and Haas and then Councillor Race after.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take the recommended action that committee refers the matter of the pool slide capital project to a future regular meeting of council. For myself, I'd like to, I think it's important that it makes it to a regular meeting of council with just that little bit of extra information that admin said they'll provide, really so that the committee can, or the community can weigh in on whether or not they see some long-term value in that project being built out with a better understanding of what the cost would be. For myself, at this stage in the game, barring additional information, I think it's important to continue investing into our rec center as it is a functional facility. Even though we understand that, it's the goal of the community to see that revamped or expanded or built up into, some new expansion. But we can't give up on what we have. So thank you.
Councillor Haas?
Yeah, I'll speak in favor of it. I guess my other assumption is, down the road, with with possible improvement in our rec center, this is an asset that we can utilize in a new, if another facility was, we could transfer over, because that's one thing I think we've always considered. Anything we do in the rec center can be taken into any upgrades or anything, so I'm assuming that is the case.
Thank you, and through the chair and through the rest of the committee, that's exactly the case. Some of the costs will be lost, for example, the tech survey and the pad, but other than that, we'll look and slide itself, yeah.
Yeah, so if I may, I'm in agreement too. Yeah, I mean, we don't know the history, the future of the rec center, and any way we can improve it. I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to see that assessment done, but just time frame, I think that it's a good investment. So thank you.
Councillor Race?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to circle back to the people who could possibly use this slide. You had said that it would be children. Is that correct?
Thank you to the chair, to the rest of the committee. I believe children and up to youth, younger youth.
Okay.
Obviously,
Do you
teenagers.
sorry, do you have my thinking is I don't want to spend all this money if half the people who go to the pool can't utilize the slide. So is there a weight requirement or how small is the slide that it'll only accommodate children or young adults?
Thank you, through the chair, the rest of the committee. And those are very good questions. We'll bring that information back to you with the imagery and give you specifics on the weight limit on it. I believe that it is, there is weight limitations on it. And just looking to my colleagues to see if anyone recalls that offhand, no. So we'll bring that information back to you.
Okay, and one more question. When we first started talking about this slide, I thought the slide would be for everyone. So has the slide dynamics changed since the initial talks about the slide?
Through the chair to the rest of the committee, it's a good question. I am myself a pool patron on a frequent basis. I will use a water slide. Most adults will not use a slide that's not a water slide, just because the fun value isn't there for necessarily adult level. And it will certainly provide a new amenity for youth to have fun with at the pool. Let's say, young teenagers, children, and those age groups.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Haas?
I have one more question based on that. When you bring this forward too, because I'm guessing, and I'm only guessing, and that's why I'm asking the question, but as we put anemones in, does that mean we need more staff on site when it comes to lifeguards, for example, in that area? Is that going to be included also potentially in the report to know what the costs, not just to putting it in, but also running it? Because I know that there was training that had to be done with the Wibbit. I don't know if it needed or extra aquatic staff on, but I'm just curious as to what the impact would be to that as well.
Through to all of committee, I have not heard any mention made of additional operating costs for staffing. I'm assuming not.
Okay.
That would have been mentioned by now. And this is not in an area that will require an attendant on the pool itself. No.
Okay,
But we will confirm that in the report back to council.
thank you.
Mr. Duke, and I'll just put myself in the queue. I definitely agree with going ahead and pursuing this. I think we're a long ways off from any dramatic changes to our rec center, and I think this is a good way to help bridge some of that gap. And definitely look forward to seeing it come forward in council. So if there's no other comments from council, we do have a consensus on the table right now that committee refers the matter of the pool slide capital project to a future regular meeting of council. There's no further discussion. I'd ask that council please vote now. Councillor Race voting in favor. That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, item 5.3, recreation level of service policy CS-7203. I'll pass this over to Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, and I'll pass this one also to Deborah Juke, Director of Community Services.
Thank you, acting CAO McLaughlin, and through the chair to the rest of the committee. The recreation level service policy is being presented to you tonight as a draft for committee's information. It's a first look at an early draft. We're very interested to see how you might respond to it. It's lengthy. You'll notice that we worked very hard to translate services provided to the public in 4 key areas into one policy, because they are all provided using a common facility and a number of supports in common as well. So you've got aquatics, you've got arena, you've got the recreation center itself, and you've got events service areas all in here. Staff have also worked very hard to turn a service into a qualitative discussion. And that might also make it a little bit over detailed. So we're just looking for your first initial perspective on this. And of course, any questions that are in depth with regards to the policy, we'll make note of and we'll return it to you for a future committee meeting discussion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor first.
What's the plans for, is there any plan for running this by user groups?
Ms. Duke.
Thank you. Through the chair to the rest of the committee, there isn't. So essentially, the task that's been put before administration is to capture current level of service in policy format for council's consideration. And so it's not considered to be an engagement point, because again, it is simply capturing what's currently already provided. However, engagement certainly is something that can be done if that is of interest.
I don't know if it's, I just thought that it might be useful. Many other councillors think the same. I'd be interested in hearing. So, because I don't really have a good idea on the arena hours, but there's a lot of user groups that might. But I mean, obviously, it has any suggestions to improve it has to be balanced with costs too. Thanks.
We have Councillor McGood next.
Just in quick response to that, before I ask my question, I would agree. I think there's no harm in getting the feedback of some of our user groups. They certainly have an intimate knowledge of the facility and the programming. For myself, I have a question about the recommended action. Relatively simple before I dive into other stuff. The recommended action is that committee approve the draft recreation culture level of service policy. Just in terms of wording, would it be more appropriate to simply refer the draft, like make any potential changes within committee of the whole, and then just recommend that the draft come back to a regular meeting of council? Would be my question.
Yeah, so as Ms. Juke stated, we actually would like to bring this back to committee again. So at this point, we're really just looking for council's verbal comments to take into consideration, and it will come back to committee again.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Voss.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Councillor Taylor's, he asked. I mean, tasking administration with this to know what the policy is one thing. I think as a result of that, though, with the in-depth of the percentages and everything, I think that that'll naturally bring some feedback now that it's public and out there. And through the budget process, then we can figure out if we need to adjust, because as you said, it boils down to costs and things like that. So, I mean, as a task for us to know what is the service level for that area. I think I feel have done a pretty good job of doing that and now understanding what's the percentage and everything. But that to me will bring feedback alone, just having that public and having it in this fashion, which it wasn't done before. This is different. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Councillor McGood.
So starting on the policy itself, page 4 of 17 of the document under section 6 responsibilities. My question is, and I'm okay with it, I just want to make sure that it's there. Section 612 says authorize the scope of facility related operations and capital projects as part of the annual budget process. Does that also cover the setting of user fees on, an appropriate basis as it comes before council? Or do we want to capture that as a separate section to set user fees, on a regular basis?
Thank you, and through the chair of the rest committee. So your fee policy is a separate thing. It is being looked at this year. It's scheduled to come to you very soon. Administration is interested in getting some firm idea of the service level before because there may be some additional fees that maybe need to be introduced into the fee policy or eliminated. So adjustments made there, but that is a separate policy.
Okay.
Nissen, you're next.
Thank you. And through the chair to administration, are we currently meeting this level of service that's in the document before us today? Or does this represent changes to our current level of service?
Thank you, and through the chair of the risk committee, thank you for the question. This is exactly what we're doing today.
Thank you, Ms. Duke. Chair, if I may, I'd like to seek consensus that council accept this report for information.
Any more comments from council on this matter?
I guess my question for administration is, at a high level, do you see any big gaps in your dealings with the public so far and what the level of service laid out in the policy is? Like, is there any expected incongruencies that we might run up against as the public has a look through this?
Thank you, and through the rest of to the chair of the rest of the committee, thank you for that question as well. I believe that one of the things that we're seeing less and less of in municipal recreation centers is programming and programmers. Programming done by the municipality with instructors that are hired by or contracted by the municipality. I believe that right now we don't have any or very little programming that's going on in the recreation center. It's an opportunity that we could improve on, and we'd like to propose that. But again, this is what you're looking at is what we currently have, and there's not a whole lot, but that's common amongst municipalities everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely, please. So I guess building off of that, that's been, I think, really, that's been a topic of conversation in the community for quite a long time. And this is always one of those tricky parts, and I think about it with snow removal is always one of those other ones, right? What's the expectation versus what is the level of service say? So if it was the will of council to get an idea of what that would cost the community down the road to have that level of service within this policy as well, how would administration want to receive that? By direction here or as part of a further report or further discussion at committee of the whole?
Thank you. Through the chair of the rest of the committee, I love the question. I think right now, administration is fairly new in their relative positions and directorship and also the manager of Parks, Rec and Culture. There are some adjustments that are already being contemplated to the roles of staff within existing budget, with existing staffing that we are exploring to bring some greater effectiveness to the service delivery. So that's what I'm saying there in so many words is to bring some programming and to bring some attention to programming itself as well. And so that's already underway. Other than that, I think that at budget time, we can bring proposals forward that would be couched in, say, an operating business case for additional staff, small amounts, or some instructors or some contracted services that would introduce programming. Those will be standalone. You'll be able to look at it, decide if you like it, the costs and so on, and the service level enhancement that's brought about. Yeah.
I'll just throw myself in the queue quickly and then Councillor Taylor. I think that, the policy makes sense, I guess, looking at that level of service that we're currently doing, but I think it would be a big miss for us to just be approving what we're doing right now. We need to really look holistically at understanding that we have a facility, we have a lot of work to do, we have a lot of planning to do. We need to be maximizing the utilization of that facility in all seasons, in all aspects. And the programming is a huge key to that. And I think a lot of the issues we have in our community about, the lack of recreation, lack of things, there's a lot of things we could be bringing in from a program perspective that could help us bridge that gap until we're able to get our new facility. So I'd certainly like to see a little more, work come forward on those items, because I think there's some steps that we can make to really strengthen our recreation programming using the facility that we have. Councillor Taylor?
I think my comment builds off your comment. I kind of looked at the report and I noticed that there was no section called revenue enhancement or promotion. I always kind of felt that these places should be run more like businesses. And that we should try to promote events and enhance revenue and advertising opportunities on however we can. So that was actually put into the document. Then maybe that would be a conscious thing that we would do. So I saw that as an omission in the document. Like there's nothing that says that there. If that's what you want, you have to have that in the document.
Councillor Taylor? If there's no other comments at this time, Mayor Anderson?
Thank you. And through the chair to administration, you brought this report before us today so that we could present you some verbal feedback and you could go away and continue to develop the report. Are there any specific sections that we have yet to discuss in this report that you'd like to get feedback on?
I thank you through the chair of the rest of the committee. No, it's your initial impressions are positive and we appreciate the response that we've got. It sounds like what I'm hearing is that some additional potential enhancements to the service level that's currently being provided would be of interest to council, and we could certainly draft those up and propose, give you some idea of what that might look like coming forward. To build them into the current level of service policy, however, it runs the risk of the expectation is that we'll provide that with current resources. And I have to say on behalf of staff, we are maxed out in doing as much as we can with current resources. There may be innovations we can bring forward. That is true, and we'll think about that. So I'd like to propose a few things and ask staff to do that and bring it forward to you for your consideration. Great.
Councillor Haas?
Yeah, I think that's the key is what do we have and then what do we want to build on? I mean, that would be the conversation and budget. I guess my only question is with the direction that's on there, accepting this for information, that negates that, right? That just leaves it where there is no follow-up, whereas the other was to bring it back to us or have further discussion on it. Is that how I read it?
Thank you, and through the chair to the rest of the committee. So we will be bringing it back to you at any rate, because our tasking and the tactical plan is to produce levels of service policies for you. So accepting it for information doesn't kill it.
Okay.
It just will, obviously, we understand that we're bringing it forward to a future committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Taylor?
I'd like to put towards an amendment to the accepting for information if that's possible. And that's that we ask the committee asks administration to look at a section called revenue enhancement and promotion. Like flush out what that section might look like. Sounded like there was some interest in that.
Do you have a wording?
Councillor Taylor. Revenue enhancement, my apologies.
Revenue enhancement and promotion.
Where's just the wording you'd like to see added to the?
Yeah, that's essentially the committee recommend administration add a section on revenue enhancement and promotion in the document. Some ideas.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of a little confused. I would need some clarification before I understand if I support this or not. I'm good with as a draft, as an aside, getting an understanding of what that might look like or how that might impact the overall document. But my understanding is proposing this as an amendment would automatically add it without an understanding of what the subsequent subsections would be, what the overall impact to the document would be. I'm all for exploring being fiscally responsible and trying to raise revenue through the facility. But as a default, I can't vote on any potential policies that aren't included yet.
Councillor Taylor.
Well, that's my intent, just to get ideas that we can look at in a draft form, whether it's, circled in red in the document or given to us separately. We're not gonna, we're gonna get a chance to look at that and say yes or no.
Yeah, I'm not in disagreement of this. I just would prefer a separate motion. We accept it for information and then have another that we'd like to see brought back with that information, the inclusion of, what are our options for this as well. So it just is, I guess, clearer in my opinion, versus making an amendment. But if administration is fine with what it is and it captures, I'm okay with it. I just, it's as long as that's clear to the min.
Administration.
Through the chair, risk committee, we've heard the conversation, we're pretty clear in what you're looking for, and we'll include a section like that in the next draft that comes forward.
So if everyone's okay, then we'll be voting on the amendment first, correct?
Amendments to add revenue and
Revenue enhancement and promotion on motion. Section. Revenue. So the amendment says to add a section on revenue enhancements and promotion. Further questions, we'll vote now on the amendment. Council Race voting in favor by hand. And that is carried with 5-4 and Mayor Neeson and Councilor Stashik against.
Just as a clarification to administration, and I'm pretty sure this is the way it is, I just would like to make sure and ensure that I don't need an additional direction. So based on our conversation, is it the intention of administration to bring back as part of that future report information on expanding programming within the rec center as part of that future report?
So thank you to the chair, to the rest of the committee. I have that in my notes. The amendment that's just been added, ways to increase the service level using the facility we have and programming. So those could come either in the report itself that's attached to that covers the service level policy. Or it can be in the added to the service level policy as an enhancement, but colored different text to indicate that it's not currently possible with resources, that kind of thing, or not. Maybe a little bit, we'll see, but yeah, so we'll bring it forward in a way that's distinguished from the exact level of service that we are currently providing.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we do have a consensus, amended consensus on the floor, that committee direct administration to add revenue enhancement and promotion and accepts this report for information. Councilor Chile.
Again, accepting this for information, it's still gonna come back to us.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay, councilors, please vote now. Councilor Race. Are you in favor? Yeah. And that is carried. Counselor Taylor.
I'd like to make a motion that we send this report out, not to the public necessarily, but out to significant user groups for their feedback. I thought that was important.
Session.
Thank you. Speaking to the motion, I'd just like to ask administration what the process is for collecting feedback from stakeholders and others like this currently.
Through the chair of all council, I don't believe that we have done that with the previous level of service policies we've brought forward. Brought it through committee and then through council, we haven't solicited public input on them because the intent of capturing the level of service, at least through this phase, was to capture what we do. Now, when we brought forward the FCSS one, the outcome of that was to solicit a report for what are other municipalities doing to see how we compare before that one's finalized and passed. So depending on what has come up as we brought them forward, there's been different outcomes, but my thoughts on going to the public now for this is we are going to bring this back to committee. I think to go to the public after the second draft might be more appropriate than going to the public at this draft. I mean, it is a public document now. The public can see it. They can view it, but in terms of soliciting a survey or going out to user groups, I think we should wait for second draft.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Taylor.
I think I'll be voting against my motion. I'll wait till we get a better draft and consider it. Thanks.
Is there any more comments on the motion that's on the floor? I see none. Ask everyone to vote now. Oh, and Councilor Race against. And that is defeated. Okay, anything further on this item? Not, we will move on to agenda item 5.4, which is development services procedures. Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes, through the chair to all council. So before you today, what we did was we brought forward a bunch of development information that we'll go through. The intent was to satisfy the motion that was passed on January 16th, that regular meeting, that council directed administration to provide options regarding development agreement, development permit, notification, publication, and opportunities for public review on discretionary uses and appeal. And Ms. Lorraine Walker's with me today to help me with any questions you may have. What we did with this analysis is we thought we would bring forward the current development process, walk council through the process, and answer any questions as we go through the process, and see if there's anything that you want to change. I just want to highlight at a very high level, this process comes out of our land use bylaw. That is the document that establishes this process for the town of Hinton. Our processes have been streamlined to assist development to get through the process as seamlessly as possible. Some municipalities have council as the development authority instead of administration, and they form either NPCs or all of council forms being the development authority. The town of Hinton existed at that way out formally at one time as well. So if you want to see us involve more places where both council and the public will get more opportunities to provide input into the process, they're conflicting wanting to have a fast process for developers and wanting lots of opportunity for council input and public feedback. So the process that we're gonna take you through tonight, it has been streamlined to try and get to be developer friendly, try and get development to happen as quickly as possible. And that's the process we think that we have in front of us. But we'll go through it, and then if you have any questions or want to direct us to explore other ideas, that's what we're here to do. So I think the best way to facilitate this conversation is the write-up includes a bunch of diagrams. And I think to go through the diagrams is the best way to have the conversation. So the first one is development agreements. And there is a chart that takes you through the flow of the development agreement process. Typically, development agreements are necessary where a developer is constructing infrastructure that the town will then take over. And so the agreement outlines everything that developer needs to do in order to construct the town infrastructure that we will take over as part of a development. As you look through all of these, the tasks are lined up where administration is the center tasks. On the left-hand side, the application is the applicant or the developer. Their tasks are on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is where council is sometimes involved. So as you can see with the development agreement process, there's not currently a lot of places for public input. However, there is places for appeal. And I guess we can, do you want me to go through all of them and then take questions, or should we do questions one at a time?
I think maybe just do them one at a time, just so that doesn't get lost in translation.
Sure.
So in the subdivision process, council, is there any questions specifically to this, or is it straight? Same from my perspective, this is awesome. It's been a good, it's very well laid out, easily broke down, so thanks very much for that. If there's no questions on this specifically, then I'll ask administration to just move forward to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, I was speaking to the development agreement process, but this subdivision process is there as well. So the subdivision process is the process that an applicant goes through to take a piece of land and divide that land into multiple parcels if they want to build houses or such on it. And then usually we get some of the land as part of that process as well. We get the roads as part of the process, and we also get environmental reserves or school reserves, those types of things as we go through that subdivision process. Typically, a applicant will hire a professional land surveyor to create those plans. And again, it follows through this process. Can I take any questions?
Councilor McGoon?
Just a high level question. Often, I think, an important part of any process is communication. So I guess, in terms of these flow charts, are these normally publicly shared documents where we sit down with our developers and say, you know, and I know it sounds simple, I want to assume that this is a yes, you know, where we provide them with this process document and say, look, so you can keep track of this when you're off site at your own facility. This is what we do. This is how we flow through things.
Through the chair of all accounts, I believe the question to that is yes, but I will let Ms. Walker answer it more
Correct, yeah.
specifically. Okay.
We do share with our developers, we meet with them and we have pre-application meetings. And we also, I believe these are on our website as well. So they are, there's also some other ones with regards to rezoning and other processes and they're all on the website as well, just so they are available.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council on this? Continue, Mr. Malcolm.
Okay, I'm gonna look at the next ones. I'm going to look at our, the development permit process. So, the applicant applies, and as you can see, there's various places. There's a couple of different places where the public is solicited feedback. Specifically, if it's discretionary uses, then Lorraine and myself as the development authority have the ability to approve discretionary uses, but then it triggers other aspects where the public has a chance to either provide input or appeal any decisions. And again, that's outlined in the land use bylaw and indicated on here in the charts.
Any questions on that? Mr. Taylor?
What typically is like an adjacent landowner? Is it exactly adjacent, or is it like across the road, or?
Chair.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through the committee. When it goes in the paper, it's advertised, and typically it will be your adjacent neighbors, like side by side across the street within like that vicinity. But you may have someone else in the general public that wants to appeal something, and if they have good planning reasons and they go through the appeal process with the SDAB, then they can certainly do that. So it doesn't just have to be, it's just an affected party, right? An affected person.
But he's looking for a definition
Oh.
of adjacent landowner.
Oh, adjacent, yeah, side by, like two on either side typically, and across is what we, that's sort of our vicinity. That we. Councilor Race.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this spring I attended Spring Caucus and I did a one-day session on planning and development, and part of the discussion was municipal planning commissions. Every municipality that I spoke to that day had a commission, and we seemed to be the only one that had an officer. So Lorraine, can you give me a little bit of history as to why we went from a municipal planning commission to where we are today?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through to the committee. In the report, I do talk to the MPC and with regards to what it takes. And what happened was we used to have an MPC, yes, and we found that it really bogged down the process for developers or for applicants, because you're waiting on whenever a meeting will be held in order to provide a report to the planning commission. Once the report, and if they miss the meeting date, then it's prolonged again. Plus, once we do bring it to the committee and it was only discretionary items, then if there was a decision that was made by the committee, then we'd have to still advertise it for appeal, which is then you're adding on another 3 weeks. So it could run an applicant 5 to 6 weeks before they can get approval. And we just found that most of the applications were all like mostly home occupations, because those again have been our biggest influx of discretionary uses. In my report, I speak to last year, and we had, I think I said 74 and 75 and 54 of those were home occupations, which are very standard for a development authority to approve. Like Mr. McLaughlin said, if it is something that it could be contentious, and we need to spend more time with it, then we'll meet as a group with the director and the team, and we'll have those discussions with that applicant or with that use that's being proposed. So really we found that the planning commission was not well utilized in that respect. At one point, we did turn them into like an advisory committee for planning. So where we could meet with them to review planning documents and to update planning documents and that sort of thing. And we did that for a while. And then at one point, the council made the decision to dissolve them. It's hard to get people to sit on those committees, the general public, because you do need 5 members at large plus 2 council members. So we found it was really hard to get people interested to sit on these boards, and the training, they need a ton of training to understand legislation, you know, all the planning documents. And I think that's in the end why they decided to dissolve the commission and put it to the Development Authority for discretionary items. If that answers your question,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
you're welcome.
Any other questions or back to Mr. McLaughlin?
And then the last couple of charts are when is a permit becomes valid. And the biggest thing on this one is if it is a discretionary use, then it actually becomes valid after the advertising period instead of after the issuing period.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the major difference. And then the last chart is how do appeals work? We currently the intermunicipal appeal board, we were with Grand Cache before they merged with Greenview. When after that happened, they withdrew from our agreement, and we are very close to re-entering into an agreement with Edson to provide that appeal process. We haven't had any appeals to date, so it hasn't become an issue, but we want to get that appeal board in place. So if it does become an issue, we have one in place. So they have got back to us. They said they're willing. We're going back and forth on the details, and that'll be coming to councils.
Is there any other questions or clarifications in the part, Councillor Taylor?
I'd like to go with the recommended action that we accept this report for information, and I like the charts, and that clarifies the process quite well. Thanks for that.
Council? Seeing none. We have a consensus on the table that the committee accepts this report for information. Councillor Space will now. The race is in favor by hand. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that report. It definitely brings a lot of clarity. Councillor Taylor?
Nice. Well, maybe that's not. Never mind.
Okay. All right, item 5.5, we have the Law and Partners report follow-up. And I will turn that over to Mr. McLaughlin as well.
Thank you, Chair, through the committee. So at the last council meeting, we received, special council meeting, we received this report from Law and Partners, and council accepted it for information. And I know there was quite a bit of discussion on, you know, what are the next steps, and looking at where we're at in the development process, and to answer the next step is really we'd like council to take this report and direct us to use it in the review of the information that we will receive from Part 999 through the development process. I think there is a lot of good information there. It shows a number of safety concerns. However, most of that will be in the future phases, and there is lots of methods and abilities for us to address the concerns that are raised as we go through those later phases. But in terms of the development process, you know, we have the road closure now complete, subdivision can now complete, And we're at the development process where phase one could commence if they submit to us all the various documents they need in order to apply for development agreement and development permit. That's the report.
Councilor Good.
I guess my question would be, looking at the Lobbin Partners report, page 30 of 33, it's where we've all seen it, it's the options that are highlighted, options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5A, 5B, 6. Depending on how council moves forward, there's a significant difference than, say, option 1, while just implementing or trying to mitigate some of the safety considerations, versus a strategic look at, say, options 5, 5A, 5B, and 6. Because fundamentally, the difference there would be, we're going to invest long-term in the golf course, we're going to expand its footprint, and that may open up some alternative options for the proponent and the golf course and the town over the long term. How might we capture that if that's the will of council?
Through the chair to all committee, I think, you know, as you read through the options, some are more doable than others, but so much of them will depend upon how fast the development proceeds and where the development goes. And I think there's lots of opportunity to explore those options as the development, you know, gets into phases 2 or 3, and perhaps the developer wants to look at some of those options and we work with them on those options in the future. And so I think at this stage, you know, the first phase of the development doesn't really come into play with many of these things. The phase 1 won't be in the areas where there's safety concerns. The impacts to golf are well known in that area, and the mitigations are there. So I think that what was raised in this report is further out, and we have lots of time to work with both Lobbin Partners, the developer, and the Hinton Golf Society to try and work out what is the best and explore those options through the future days.
Follow on something, Chair? I guess here's my concern. That sounds good. I guess what I'm concerned about is I don't want to be surprised if we get to a point where we say, well, we've gone as a town, as a municipality, so far down the development road, which, you know, sort of as we looked at, really belongs for the most part squarely in the hands of administration. And council and the community really don't have any other options, and it's no longer possible strategically to explore, say, options 5, 5A, 5B, or 6. I guess, do you have anything that can sort of, that I can bring to the community to say, nope, all the plans are still on the table? Because that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, through committee to all council, I think those are on the table, but I you know, I don't think that the town is looking at investing large amounts of money to do some of that stuff. So then it has to be, well, who would do it? And if at some point in time, you know, the Lobbin Partners report does raise some issues with that skinny piece through the center that will be very tough to mitigate, and the developer will have quite a bit of work to do to get over those issues, and we will need to work together. And so maybe through that process we partner, because we are partners in this process, or maybe they choose to do it. But those kind of things are years out, really. And I think we have time to make sure that we have everyone at the table to look at those things as they happen.
Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, I'd like to put forward the recommended actions. The committee seeks consensus to direct administration to utilize the Lobbin Partner report as a guide to mitigate the hazards in the interface area between the proposed development and the golf course in the process of reviewing the Part 99 development permit applications. I think one of the things that this report does and does well is it shows the safety margin zones more than we've seen it in the past. And that's what you're proposing there to look at. And that allows us to move forward with the proponent with the sales contract that we've signed and we're committed to, and consider this information in the planning zone. And I think it's worth noting that my opinion on the town of Hinton's ability to pay even a portion of the larger investment opportunities that Councillor Magoon was talking about is extremely limited, at least in the short term, due to our water treatment plant, waste treatment plant, financial obligations. So I think the recommended action is appropriate. Thanks.
Taylor, is there any more comments, Councillor Magoon?
Well, and I apologize because it does impact how I vote on the recommended action that's on the table. At what point, or is there a plan by administration to bring back future opportunity for conversation on options 5 through 6? Because fundamentally, the recommended action says the following: that committee seeks consensus to direct administration to utilize the Lobbin Partners report as a guide to mitigate the hazards. So fundamentally, though, the difference between option 1 and option 5 in mitigating hazards is worlds apart. One says we're going to essentially use the space as it is, whereas options 5 through 6 say we're actually going to expand the footprint, which then opens up a variety of options for mitigating hazards.
Through the chair to committee, although this report was short, it was actually quite difficult to write. And in writing it, what we looked at is the town is wearing 2 hats when it comes to this development. Our first hat is we are the development authority. And people need to be able to develop in the town and see consistent decisions and actions by the town, so they have confidence to invest and develop in our community. And when we wrote this report, we mainly wore that hat. So we wrote this report and wrote this recommendation to make sure that we're living up to our commitments in our purchase sales agreement, and that we're doing everything we need to as a development authority. The second hat that we wear is owner of the golf course. And that's going to continue to be council's role in this project. Council is the owner of that golf course, and they have an interest in how it develops, how it's looked after, how much money we spend on it, all those kind of things. And council is free to put forward anything they want at budget time, and ask us to bring these things back and look at those things. Council's always free to direct administration to bring forward any of those options as the golf course owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll just throw myself in the queue. I think the thing that I struggle with this wording specifically, while I certainly think we should be using this report as a guide to mitigate the hazards. That's clear. But what I struggle with is that we have a report that never gave us an opinion of what they felt the best practice and what the solution was. There's still a lot of options, and I still find that very vague. And while I do agree, do we want a multi-million-dollar in amidst all the other things that we're doing, moving golf course holes? Not necessarily, but I struggle when the report hasn't been clear on what their recommended action is, that we're taking such a broad stroke. And not really kind of narrowing it down to some of those other things that we'll see. That's really concerned. Councillor Taylor?
It wasn't appropriate that the report give us an opinion. This consultant only had part of the information. He didn't even know the sales agreement. The consultant give us a opinion, only having half the facts wouldn't be useful. Thanks.
I guess the other thing is that's something that we need to do. Who's our next expert, Mary Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna support this motion and the fundamental reason going forward is the Development Authority requires technical documentation to determine both what parts of the land that we've sold to a proponent is developable and how that's developable and what's appropriate in a development permit. We've spent the money and we've gone out to an expert and we've gotten a report that provides good technical documentation that will allow administration without the input of any additional parties to determine where there's potential hazards in a development permit application. And we have to remember that today there is no development permit application. We have a concept and we've sold some land, but there is no development on the table to discuss mitigations with. So it's not even appropriate for us at this governance stage to have that discussion. We need to provide the tools to our development authority to make the best possible decisions going forward on the development process. Now, secondary to that, we have options 1 through 6 that everybody looks at, but those options are not a part of the development process. We don't give direction to the development authority about options 1 through 6. That's something we work with the developer based on their mitigations and their multi-phase plan. So if that's a separate conversation altogether from providing our development authority with the required technical analysis and tools to make good decisions when it comes to specifically development permits, development agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I plan on supporting the direction on the floor, but for council's administration, I plan on following up with what I deem to be an important strategic direction afterwards.
There's no other questions about the consensus that's on the floor right now. It's that committee seeks consensus to direct administration to utilize the Loveland Partners report as a guide to mitigate the hazards in the interface area between the proposed development and the golf course in the process of reviewing the PAR 999 development permit applications. Please vote. And Councillor Race. And that motion is carried unanimously. Councillor McGill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just sent to Miss Davy Campbell recommended, or pardon me, a direction for council's consideration. Madam Chair, if I may, while she's typing it out, perfect. I'd like to seek consensus that council direct administration to return a report to committee of the whole exploring strategic options and high-level budgetary impacts related to options 5 and 6 as outlined in the Loveland Partners report. And if I could speak to that, Madam Chair. Yeah, in short, that's the exact consideration that I think when you look at the Loveland Partners report, that really is the game changer. Are we looking, for myself, I think there's a consideration of, are we going to try and mitigate some of the hazards that are clearly outlined in the report with the given space? Or are we looking at investing in the golf course over the long term as a municipality to make it better as we originally intended with the original DOI? And for myself, it's certainly the latter. I'm certainly interested in exploring what that might cost, what some of the budgetary impacts might be over the long term, and how that can work together with the proposed development. Because that, for me, is a far more considered option. It might be a little bit slower, but I think ultimately it's better for the community. It's better for the municipal asset, which is in this case, the golf course. And ultimately, I think it serves the developer in the long term as well. And I think this is just one of those options where we have to see, is it the will of council to consider that, or is, council not in support of that? So I'd like to try and answer that sooner rather than later.
Mr. Russo, please.
Yeah, sorry to the chair, to all of the committee. I just want to build on Councilor Good's point that if it's a council asset, this belongs to the town of Meath. Never in my understanding and experience have I seen any of the following done. One, a market study. And what a market study does, it tells you what the long-term vision of the town is for this golf course. The particle line development has actually sparked that we actually should be doing something like that. There's a second type of report, which is called the agronomic report. And that will help you to understand what your current conditions are. As the Golfing Society has outlined several times to us, that there are certain fairways that are not playable at certain times. There are certain grades, there are certain topography matters that is not aligning. That will advise you on that. And then finally, it will also tell you about your irrigation currently happening. My understanding is that the putting range has irrigation, which has never been operational. Ms. Webb and I had the privilege of touring that with the Golfing Society last summer, and there's been many things that we've noticed. Just to take the equipment to get our arms around that, that will help council to see that this asset is either worth investing in, or you may want to take a different direction. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying at least it gives you that full understanding. So further to your point, Councilman Magoo, that will help us to have that. This is going to cost us a few dollars to do a market study and the agronomic study, etc. But it's not, if you look at the total cost of this asset you have versus doing those studies to inform you, it is probably a minute percentage. Thank you.
Mr. Russo, Councilor McGinn.
Just in seeking clarification, Mr. Russo, do you believe then that what you had indicated would be a part of the direction that's on the floor?
Through the chair, that'd be correct, Councilman. Yes, we bring you that cost as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
Would Councilor Magoo's direction slow down the R 99 development in any way?
Through to the chair to Councilor Taylor. No, we could run these things parallel as soon as that report comes to council, because right now, strictly speaking, part of All is in the process of getting the subdivision submissions in, which they've done. And so that process is moving along as of this past week. So this is not intended to slow it down. In fact, the contrary is going to give council a better understanding of what your potential capital expenditure upcoming is going to be. Every year, the Golfing Society comes with their needs from an operational point of view, as well as the capital. We haven't really looked at that in detail, so that will inform your 2025 capital budget before any.
Follow up, Councilor Taylor.
Should we decide to sell the rest of the golf course, would such a report be useful?
Through to the chair to Councilor Taylor, absolutely, because your market study is going to help you to have better green fees. Why we're charging what we're charging right now versus what others are charging. That will tell you what you can do to get a better green fee. Will also tell you where your problematic areas are. Not speculate, but know exactly what that capital dollar is going to equal you. So being enhanced with that information, you can then share that with the proposed operator or future purchaser of that of any nature.
Not that I think I need to, but I just want to clarify based on Councillor Taylor's last question. For myself, the intent of putting forward this direction is to invest in this as a municipal asset and to continue to make it bigger, better, and stronger. Thank you.
Council. Opposed to consensus. All right, so seeing none, what we have on the floor right now is that committee direct administration to return a report to committee of the whole exploring strategic options and high level budgetary impacts related to 5 and 6 as outlined in the Law and Partners report.
Madam Chair, point of clarification, for the wording, I believe it should be related to options 5 and 6.
Absolutely, and I will apologize for that, Ms. Davy Campbell. That was just a typographical miss.
Okay, so that committee direct administration to return a report to committee of the whole exploring strategic options and high level budgetary impacts related to options 5 and 6 as outlined in the Law and Partners report. Okay, council, please vote now. Councilor Race in favor. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We have item 6. Do we want to take a break now, maybe? No, we'll wait till closed session. Okay. So item 6 reporting, we have 6.1 is council reports. I'll start with you, Councilor Magoo.
Nothing to report, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councilor Taylor,
Nothing to report.
Councilor Stashik,
There's nothing to report, thank you.
Mayor Nisi.
Thank you. So council, this evening, we've got a closed session agenda item with our medical professionals that are in the room here today. I just wanted to give everybody an update on some of the developments regarding our medical system and the situation here in Hinton. Approximately 2 weeks ago, I was approached by our medical professionals to have this meeting put on an agenda. And at that time, I reached out directly to the province through our MLA. Our MLA was able to get us a meeting with the Minister of Health. Councillor Race and I both met with the Minister of Health, along with 3 ADMs from her staff and with our administration. And we were able to get some answers on the new initiatives, specifically regarding nurse practitioners and the recruitment of physicians. There are some interesting changes the province has put into place for both recruitment of physicians and bringing nurse practitioners to communities like ours for primary care. I can tell you that since the meeting with the minister, I've had multiple follow-ups, both with the MLA and from the minister's office. And I do believe that we are currently getting good attention from the province. And while the problems that exist, and we're going to hear about some more of them later tonight, they are complex and to some extent a little bit intractable. I do believe that we've got good support going forward. And as we're able to pitch ideas and proposals, we have an ear in the minister's office now to try and action some of those things and stem the tide of burnout in our medical community on other issues. The other update that I have for council at this time is the CAO Performance Review Committee has been going through the procedure. We went through that process relatively recently. It was quite a cumbersome process. In your inboxes, you've gotten the questionnaire, the updated questionnaire. And again, if I could get any feedback from you this week about those, and we should be seeing in our council agendas, hopefully, possibly next week, an update to the CAO Performance Review procedure so that we can smooth that out and save some time on that administrative process. And that's all I have for today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernice. Councillor Haas.
Nothing to report, Madam Chair.
Councillor Race, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I have to report is last Wednesday, I attended a wonderful award ceremony put on by the town. We saw Eva Arsenault get a 45-year acknowledgement with the town, and John Sanders with the fire department, 40 years. Had a wonderful meal, listened to some speeches. Very good event. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Race. And I have nothing to report. So moving on to item 6.2, Chief Administrative Officer reports. Mr. McLaughlin.
Okay, so our April operating highlights are included. And if you have any questions on them, I'm hoping someone in the room can answer.
Councillor Haas.
I do have one quick question. And it was a comment that was made with Minute Council. I couldn't help but notice that there's some work being done. Because I don't know, the resident did not say where they live, and there's some drainage issues, but I know there's some areas that are being repaired. I see Sherwood Slope failure project. Is that anything to do with what the resident was speaking of, or is there work in progress? Without knowing the area, I can't speak to obviously, but is there anything that's happening with, because I know we had some drainage issues with that big rainfall last year that are being cleaned up this year and fixed. So I'm just curious.
Through the chair to the committee, no, there's no current work happening to address that lady's concern that she brought forward. Our staff have been out there and looked at the situation a few times. The situation has not been ignored, and we have followed up and I believe after the last visit to council, the tree was removed and there were certainly some meetings that took place.
Fair enough. I just wanted to highlight if there was something done. So, but that's great if there's been follow up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from council on the April 2024 operating highlights? Seeing none. Councilor Haas.
I will move to go into closed session, please, with break.
So we will reconvene just the interest of our, like, yeah. City council, we'll move into closed session at 4:44 p.m. Please vote now.
The time on that is.
Oh, yeah.
I wish it was 4:44. 5:44. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Grace. Okay, so that committee move into closed session at 5:45 p.m. Please vote now. Just lost the council race.
She voted.
Okay, all right, we will reconvene at 5:50, just in the interest of time and our guests that we have here.